welcome back to another episode of A Journey Across Africa. Guy Deacon has made his way to the city of Freetown in the West African country of Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone owes its name to a 15th century explorer who came to map its harbors. Hearing the loud roar of thunder coming from the mountains, he called the land Lion's Mountains. The capital, Freetown, is one of the world's largest natural harbors. In the 17th and 18th centuries, it was the destination for freed slaves. A former British colony, the country has had a turbulent history since gaining its independence. In the 90s, a brutal civil war fueled by so-called blood diamonds devastated the country. However, the country is now at peace and rebuilding. Sierra Leone is a land of lush rainforests and abundant wildlife and palm-fringed white sand beaches, a country rich in culture and resources. Let's now join Guy Deacon and hear about his travels. Afternoon for you. You're now in Freetown, Sierra Leone.
Yep, and it's hot. It's about 30 degrees C, and it's been a bit higher that during the day. This is a warm season, and luckily I've got an air-conditioned room, so I'm going from my air-conditioned room where I've got lots of stuff piled up out to the wagon, which is parked outside, sweltering, dripping in sweat, and then beetling back to my room to recover again. It's very hot.
Sierra Leone is located where?
If you imagine the map of Africa and put the middle of Sahara, draw a line from the middle of Sahara to the 7 o'clock position, even 8 o'clock, and it's in this. It's in that bulge sticking out on the west of Africa, south of Senegal, south of Guinea. But before you get round to the southern-facing nations such as Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire, and all those places, it's just on where the continent bends round from the south, going towards the east, and it's the nearest point to South America.
What were your thoughts upon arriving?
I'd been building up this for some time, of course, so I'd been expecting to come out for years, genuinely for 2 years. I've been waiting for this moment. And of course, my biggest concern was just getting here, because the flight itself.
I've been to Sierra Leone before. What were your thoughts upon arriving back in the country?
Well, my genuine thoughts were just what were the practical aspects of getting there. And the airport at Lungi, which I don't know how much you know about Sierra Leone, but the airport for Freetown is not actually in Freetown. It's in a place called Lungi, which is about a 40-minute boat ride away on the other side of a bay. So it's actually quite a smooth process, but a little bit chaotic, and it's difficult to see your way through it. But I just joined various queues and ended up with the right visa being stamped and goodness knows what, and picked up my bags. And I was met by somebody from the British Embassy who then made sure I got to the sea coach, which is the boat that takes you from the airport to Freetown and leaves about an hour and a half after the airplane lands. That was all right. And again, it went quite smoothly. And I was then met at Aberdeen, which is the part of Freetown where the boat comes in, by the people I'm staying with, by Martin Travers, who's been looking after me for the last couple of weeks. And I was mightily relieved to see him, as you can imagine, because it meant that I finally got to the right place in the right time with all my stuff ready for the next stage.
What have you personally discovered about that country?
I've been very focused on what I've been doing rather than worrying about the country itself, because I've been getting myself sorted out. But Freetown is it's an unusual town in African terms, because there's no sort of obvious center to it. To me, it's very condensed, and everywhere you go, there are people everywhere. It's a very compact, very condensed city with a population of whatever it happens to be, which is crammed into a very small space. It's very, very hilly. It makes San Francisco look like a hardly any hills at all. There are extraordinary sort of climbs and goodness knows what, which these little motorbikes go up and down, and there are people everywhere. So the traffic is obviously very bad, but no worse than many other countries. And you have to rely upon people to get you around, because working your way around the place is pretty tricky. The only thing that's not reassuring, that's not the right word, that helped is that many of the place names are in English. So I recognize places like Aberdeen, Lumley, Wilberforce, all these names which stand out in your mind, and you can use them as landmarks to get around the place. I'm getting to recognize places. I go from embassy to embassy or to hardware store to what shops to go and buy things, but it's quite tricky. But it's a busy old place.
Sierra Leone, about 20 years ago, was suffering through a terrible civil war, sort of made famous by that movie Blood Diamonds. Do you do you see any of the effects or after effects of that conflict still around Freetown and where you're at?
Um, in detail, no, I don't. But one of the things that's very stark, and I'm very proud to say this, is as a result of the intervention by Tony Blair at the end of it all, the the standing of the UK government and the British in particular is very high because, of course, they came and sort of largely resolved the issue very quickly. It was a horrible business that was going on, and it just needed somebody to come and stamp their authority. And as a result of Mr. Blair's actions in particular, the reputation of the British troops that came out and have been here pretty much since then has been very high. And not quite everywhere you go, but many places you go, there are Union flags flying. And I spent a time in a kaka when there's tok three-wheeled egg type machines, where the driver couldn't speak highly enough about the British Army and what they did, and people are very conscious that everything was sold by intervention from outside in a good way. And the British troops have been here since then, helping train the Sierra Leonean army, and the Sierra Leonean army wear our uniform and are very proud of their association with the British Army, which is fantastic. And that, of course, for me, that makes me feel very confident in many ways, and gives me a very warm feeling. And if I feel in doubt anyway, I just have to say I'm a retired British soldier, and they suddenly start talking about the good life and everything. It's fantastic, very unusual.
It has to make you proud.
Genuinely, it's a remarkable thing.
Have you had the opportunity to have any interactions with the locals?
I've had some interaction with the locals, not least of all because everywhere you go, there are very few European people around. There are a certain sort of number of Lebanese people who've been here for generations, but the expat community is relatively small. So everything you do is with Sierra Leoneans. And if you go to East Africa, if you go to Tanzania or to Kenya, you see white people and Europeans and Americans all over the place, either working for aid organizations or tourism or whatever. But there are aid organizations around and about. There are very few tourists that I've noticed, and even on the beaches, which are beautiful, which used to be very well known for tourism, the people who are there tend to be Sierra Leonean or the very small number of expat Europeans, but by and large, it's Sierra Leoneans or bust. So shops are all run by Sierra Leoneans. If I want any help from anybody, I get Sierra Leoneans to help me. So I'm spending my entire time with them, and they speak enough English, luckily, for me to get by. Although they speak with a rather strange accent, which is quite awkward. But no, I spend my entire time with them wherever I go because that's what there is.
Tell us about those conversations you have with the Sierra Leones. Um, can you describe them for us? And have you met anyone interesting?
I have met some very interesting people, and there's a range of people here who are extremely passionate about what's going on in Sierra Leone and are in a position to do something about it. If I tell you, for example, and I'll get some of these facts wrong, and I probably need to send you an email sometime to get the facts right. The person I'm staying with at the moment is paid for. He's a British ex-military officer who worked in the assistant training team for a while, and he's been working for the mayor of Freetown, who is Sierra Leonean, who came back during the Ebola crisis some years ago. She was working in London, had been there for years, came back to help out. And then when she got here, she realized that actually her heart was in Sierra Leone because she was Sierra Leonean. And she's one of a small number of people who are out here, maybe more, but I don't know them, who are very, very interested in the welfare of Sierra Leone itself. And they've come back and they're giving them their time and their efforts and their experience to the benefit of all and doing a hugely good job at it. I haven't actually met the mayor yet, and I hope I will do so. But people like her have come back to do the right thing for their country that's their home. And that's fascinating. And I spent the other day with another similar chap who runs a haulage company who's going to help me by providing me access to people who know how to stick stickers on vehicles, all this sort of stuff. And he's in the same sort of boat. He was living in the UK for 12 years, been living in Italy before that, and he just suddenly decided I'm going to go home and set up my business at home and do what I want to do back in Sierra Leone, because that's where I live and that's what I am. So there's this range of people who've come back home and are actually doing a huge amount for the community to improve things for a lot of everybody who's here, which is very reassuring.
Very positive for the country.
Yeah, I think so. And there are a lot of people, I don't know how many Sierra Leoneans there are in London, but there are plenty of them. But they all have a massive interest in what's going on here. And some of them, maybe enough, I don't know what the numbers need to be, are coming back and helping to do things right here, which is brilliant.
Now, how's the work coming along getting the van ready to go?
Well, one of the frustrating things about Sierra Leone, and it's very frustrating, is they have got a new rule. Well, I say new, it's not that new, it's relatively new, which does not allow right-hand drive cars in the country. They argue, and it's a reasonable argument to be made, that most accidents are caused by people driving right-hand drive cars in left-hand drive country. And there's probably a bit of truth in that, but I'm sure statistics can be made to say anything. But as a result, you can't bring a vehicle into the country if it's right-hand drive, which is extraordinary. And I didn't know this when I came in before. And I arrived at the border 2 years ago from Guinea, and they wouldn't let me in. So I said, well, I can't not come in because I can't live on the border forever. So I got permission to drive down to the High Commission, where I would then have to get special permission to keep the vehicle until I disappeared off out the other side. Of course, then COVID came and struck, and 2 years later, I'm still in the same boat. So I'm now in a position where I've got to get the vehicle registered and approved to drive out of the country. And in the meantime, I've been making sure it's working and everything it is, and it is. The people I've been staying with for the last couple of weeks looked after the vehicle while I was away and made sure it was safe and secure and not falling to bits. And I'm delighted to say, apart from 2 flat batteries, it's been tremendous. So all I've literally done is change the batteries, restowed it, change some springs, they need to be done anyway. The tires all seem to be all right. I'm going to go and get it serviced with the help of the chap I was just talking about, who runs this haulage company, in the next day or two, this week coming up, hopefully. And then it should be good to go. And it's just a question of remembering how I stow everything inside it, making sure I haven't got too much clobber that I don't need, and I only got the stuff I do need. But it's because of the heat and because I'm a bit weak, it takes a very long time to do these things. And so I'm very glad I left enough time to do it.
The van has a solar panel on it to help you refresh the batteries?
Yeah, well, I fitted a solar panel. It didn't have it before. So annoyingly, I actually had a solar panel in the van, which I would use for emergencies. I just take it out and plug it in. But I've decided to mount it permanently on the roof. But that's one of the jobs I've done. So that will always charge the batteries, because I don't want to be left with batteries that are flat again, because it's such a pain. So I've rigged them up on the roof, put in controllers, which you have to do, because as you may know, if you put a solar panel in incorrectly, it'll fry the batteries in no time at all, especially here where it's really hot. So I had to make sure that was all wired up properly. And it's all a bit, I know roughly what I'm doing, but I'm a bit nervous about drilling holes in roofs of cars, this sort of stuff, for wires to go through, because that's always a bit daunting. So I've been very careful doing that. But that's one of the jobs I've done. What else have I done? I'm going to fit this week coming, I've got a kit that, what it does, it's very clever. It's made by a company called Ecomotus in Devon in England. And it's not new technology, but it's a very new way of doing it. And it infuses hydrogen into the air inlet, which means that the diesel or whatever fuel you're burning burns more efficiently with less exhaust gases and lower temperature and higher mileage. So you therefore get lots of benefits from injecting hydrogen into the system. And it's a very simple system where you literally have a water bottle which has got deionized water in it, an anode and a cathode, one of which produces hydrogen, one of which produces oxygen, a little control box to make sure the level is the right amount, which then draws off the hydrogen and just lets it flow into the airflow, and that just makes all the difference. And I'm going to have that fitted this coming week, which will be quite fun.
Is the van gas or diesel powered?
Diesel.
Diesel?
Luckily, because diesel has lots of benefits. Petrol is good for many things, but diesel tends to be better mileage, tends to be safer to use, it tends to be more easily available, tends to have a more robust engine where you're not so worried about water getting into it and everything. So diesel is the right thing to have here. But of course, right now, there are always trucks burning diesel, but we have a shortage in Sierra Leone, like most of the rest of the world, which is a bit of a drama, which is something I have to think about now. which I wasn't planning on thinking about before.
Fuel shortages right now. Is that going to impact you at all?
Yeah, it is. In two ways. First of all, fuel has gone up quite a lot anyway, but it's gone up from less than it is in the UK to still less than it is in the UK, so I'm not too worried about it. Secondly, availability becomes a bit more of a problem because you end up with people sort of hoarding it and queuing up and all the rest of it. Thirdly, you get people deciding to sell off fuel that's not necessarily very good condition. They mix it with various other stuff, and therefore you end up with rubbish fuel, and you've got to be careful about that. Fourthly, I have jerry cans on the back of the vehicle, which if I left out with fuel in them, I'm sure they get stolen. So I've got to be a bit more careful about how much fuel I carry with me at any one time. So I've got to just think about it more carefully than I was before, rather than just not worrying about it at all. I've now got to be very conscious of how much fuel I've got in my vehicle, where the next fuel station is likely to be, what the situation is before I get there, how much extra fuel I've got to carry, and all that sort of stuff. So it's become certainly more demanding.
And all this traveling solo.
Pretty much. It doesn't make it any easier having anybody else doing it with you. You've got to think for yourself anyway. But of course, I'll have. I'm hoping that Rob Hayward will come out next week for a couple of weeks anyway. So he'll be with me for a couple of weeks. Then he'll go away again, leaving me in Liberia by myself. And then I'll go from Liberia through to Cote d'Ivoire by myself. That's the plan. But I'm happy with that. But so much of the time by myself, not all the time.
Well, what's next in the trip?
Next is Liberia. And I've now got the Liberian visa, and I've got the permit to take my vehicle in, all of which is under control. Jolly expensive, I have to say. It's a lot of dollars to go for a visit for a week or so. And I suppose I could have avoided it by going back into Guinea, but that's very expensive as well. But I've never been to Liberia, and I want to go and experience it and see what it's like. Sounds like a fascinating place.
What do you expect along the way?
Well, the first thing is I've got to rely upon the permission that I'm given as to how long I can travel. There is a national park on the way, and a forest park on the way where I'd like to stop and see what's going on and just go and do some bird watching. But the Chinese have just built a nice new road which goes pretty much all the way to the border. So the journey, which was much more difficult up until 2 years ago, is now quite straightforward and quite quick. So I'm rather hoping it'll be a straightforward breeze, but I know what will happen. The police will stop me at checkpoints and they'll say, why are you driving a right-hand drive car? You're not allowed to. So I'll have to explain that I've got special permission from the Road Traffic Authority, all of which will be done. And that'll just be a real bore. But it's par for the course. You know, I've got a car that's unusual. I'm driving on the wrong side. So that'll be tedious, but there we go.
And the destination spot, your place of destination in Liberia is what?
Yes, well, I've made contact with people in Monrovia, which is the capital of Liberia, named after one of your presidents, I think, once upon a time. And it's very much like Freetown, and it was created for people to return from wherever they've been taken as slaves to return to Africa, their homeland. So Freetown, Liberia, Monrovia in Liberia, Libreville in Gabon are all the same sort of towns in that respect. And so I think Monrovia is going to be quite an interesting city. And I'm told it's much more American than many other parts of Africa. So that'll be quite an interesting experience for me because they're focused entirely on the US rather than any other part of the world.
What difficulties or dangers do you expect on that travel to Monrovia?
The road gets quite bad where the Chinese road stops, but that's okay. I will find the border. Well, I'm going to obviously have as much as I can in place before I get to the border, and that should be all right. So it should be fine. And once you get to the other side, I don't know very much about Liberia, but equally not knowing very much is a good thing because it means there's nothing bad I should know. I tend to know bad things before I know good things. So Liberia should be fine. And I've spoken to people before I set off, and I will again, to make sure I follow the right routes, that I'm going the right sort of time of day. But Monrovia is only a couple of hours beyond the border anyway, so I should be there in good time. What I'll probably do is camp before I cross the border, find someone to pull over. So I cross the border nice and early and have bags of time to get to Monrovia, because you don't want to be rushing when you get to a new country.
What's the terrain like? What's the land like on that trip?
I can tell you that in 2 weeks' time.
Perfect.
My understanding is that from here to the border, it's now the road is there. It's all very good and very straightforward. But the rainy season hasn't started yet, so the road would not be too bad anyway. But it's quite lush and verdant with lots of trees. There's a forest national park where I'd like to stop and have a look and see what's going on.